Welcome, everyone, to the Ramana Maharshi International Satsang based here in the city of San Diego, California. And let us welcome, first thing, our special monthly guest every first Sunday of the year from London, the International Ramana Maharshi scholar, Michael James. Michael, welcome. It's good to be with you again.
Thank you. It's good to be back again.
For those of you who are watching us on YouTube, and I know many people do, Michael joins us every first Sunday of the year at 10 a.m. California time. And if you'd like to join us on Zoom with Michael, you're certainly more than welcome to do so. Just write to me. My name is Ted. You can catch me at newsguy55@aol.com, and I'll immediately put you on our mailing list. We also study Ramana's teachings every Sunday of the year, including when Michael is here and when he's not here. And you are cordially invited to join us then as well. Just let me know who you are. So let's get started now with our first question. It
But
comes from
firstly,
Christine.
thank you for lightening my burden.
Thank you for
You
what?
lightening my burden.
How was that?
You said I join you on the first Sunday of every year.
Well, you have 11 more visits coming up.
Right.
First
So it's
month
the
of
first
every
Sunday
year.
of every month.
Yes. Okay. Thanks for catching that. I have made an occasional mistake every year. By the way, you asked if Christine was here, and she is, and she's from
Yeah.
Ireland via London, living now in Barcelona, Spain. So,
Okay. Right.
Christine, good to have you with us. And she says this is long, so be patient, and I'll try my best to make sure I don't make any mistakes. Christine says, a decade of intense suffering has brought me to where I am today. Throughout the day, my mind has matured enough to go back to the non-personal I and feel my original source. That is a simple reflection on the unconditional love for my children and back to myself, and it's beautiful and it's powerful. Occasionally, I observe a personal I with love, and so can observe the thoughts without any attachment. I'm so grateful for this clarity in my life. However, the non-personal I is only a partial glimpse. I feel if I had a full glimpse, I would be immersed completely. I am stuck in this half of the world of hell. I am stuck in this half world of hell, she writes. I know the love of I, but I feel the absolute power of ego that it is not. When I lean into the hell, it is heavy, dense, and disabling. I question to whom this is happening, and I try not to put a time limit on this, but it is ever present. My question, I'm obviously still identified with the density. I try to look at it fully with love, but it is so very dark. How can I find a touch of light to look more directly? I'm thankful I can see the darkness and be present in it, but it is so disabling. I want to be happy and spread joy and light every minute, but I can't seem to get past this ever-present density. I know you are going to suggest, Michael, that I stop wanting to get rid of this. Perhaps I should love it enough to live with it, but my preference is to be a different personality is causing me suffering. The ego is so sophisticated. No one ever seems to address the agony of the extraction process. Michael.
Right. There are several things here that need to be clarified. Firstly, we are not two eyes, a personal I and a non-personal I. We are just one I. That one I is the pure I. But when it is mixed and conflated with adjuncts, such as I am Christine, I am Michael, I am Ted, or I am whoever, that is what is called ego, or what you refer to as the personal I. But it's important to understand these are not two different I's. It's the same I. One is in its pure condition, And the other is the same I mixed and conflated with adjuncts, as I am this person, I am this body. It is only as this ego, but the ego is the I that mistakes itself to be a person. So it's what you refer to as the personal I. This ego is what experiences all other things. So when you talk about this half world of hell and this heavy dense, that it's heavy and dense, it is heavy, dense and disabling, and that it's darkness, these all exist only in the view of ego. So where in the midst of all this darkness, where to find the light? The answer is that we ourselves are the light. That is, even to know the darkness, the light of awareness is required. And we are that light of awareness. But as ego, we wrongly identify ourselves with the darkness. So the aim of self-investigation is to turn our attention back towards ourself, the light, and thereby to ignore the darkness. We need not try and love it. We need not look on the personal I with love. But we also shouldn't hate it. We need to be indifferent to it, because the only way to free ourselves from it is to hold on to the light. That is, the light of awareness alone is real. All this darkness of phenomena and all the whatever hell we feel we are in, whatever intense suffering we feel we are undergoing, none of this is real. It seems to be real because we attend to it. And the more we attend to it, the more we dwell on it, the more real we make it seem to be. But none of it is real. It's all just an appearance. What is real is only the pure I as it actually is. So that is what we need to attend to. That is what we need to hold on to. The more we hold on to the light, the more the darkness will dissolve and drop off of it by itself. We don't have to bother about getting rid of the darkness. We need to just be indifferent to it, be unconcerned about it. Our only concern should be to attend to I. And we, as I said at the beginning, it's not a matter of two I's, a personal I and a non-personal I. I is one. So now we are experiencing this I mixed and conflated with adjuncts as I am this person. But essentially, that is no different from the pure I. So if we simply attend to I, the adjuncts, the person that we seem to be, will drop off, and the pure I alone will remain. So we are not to fight the darkness. I mean, darkness is the very nature of ego. Ego is that is when we rise as ego, we attach ourselves to this false appearance of a body, and having limited ourselves as this body, we then have so many needs. That is, as a body, we have so many needs. We need food, we need clothing, we need so many things, and that gives rise to desires. And that is, and as Bhagavan explained, the very nature of ego is to grasp form. All forms, whether physical forms or mental forms, all forms are just an appearance. None of them are real. But the more we grasp those forms, the more reality we give them. So the way to free ourselves from all this appearance is to hold on to what alone is real. What alone is real is that light of awareness that is ever shining in us as our own being, I am. That is what we need to hold on to. and so we all have a dense cloud of Vishaya vasanas. That's inclinations to attend to things other than ourselves. That's the very nature of ego, to have Vishaya vasanas. That is, ego is not the vasanas, but it's the nature of ego to have vasanas. So in order to free ourselves from ego and all its vasanas, we need to hold on more and more to what we essentially are, which is that mere awareness I. So that is what we should be attending to. Don't worry about ego. Don't worry about all its intense suffering. Don't worry about all its preoccupations with so many things. Don't worry about the heaviness, denseness, darkness, or whatever. We need to just hold on to this essential light of awareness, I am. Christine, is that a helpful answer to your question?
Yes, it's wonderful. I mean, it's everything that I know, because you can say the same thing over and over again.
Yes,
However, in the moment,
I know, I
at the
know.
difficult times, yeah,
We
and
all,
everything's dropping away. There's no wine. There's no, wanting to go out. There's nothing. I'm just left with the light and the
yes,
dark. That's it.
yes, yes. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to say, you mentioned about a glimpse. The term glimpse in this context is a rather misleading term. We can glimpse something other than ourselves. We cannot glimpse ourselves. We always know ourselves. Bhagavan often used to emphasize the fact that the jnana, the knowledge, the self-knowledge that we are seeking is not a new knowledge to be attained. We already know ourselves. We all know I am. The problem is, instead of knowing ourselves as we actually are, we know ourselves as something other than what we actually are. We mistake ourselves to be this person. So Bhagavan often said, all we need to do is to remove the false awareness or false knowledge, and the real awareness alone will remain. And how to remove the false knowledge is by holding on to the real knowledge, the pure awareness I am.
I mean, I understand that. It makes absolute sense. I just would love to be immersed in it. That's what I meant by the glimpse. I'd love to just have
Yeah, we would
no
all
disbelief.
we would
Yes.
all love to be immersed in it. The problem is that we still have too much desires and attachments for other things. So we have to wean our mind off all its interest, all its concerns in things other than our mere being. That takes time and practice. So we need to be patient. We need to be patient with ourselves, because
Yeah.
we are trying to extract ourselves from desires and attachments that come from time immemorial. It's not just in this lifetime. For so many lifetimes, we've been having all these desires and attachments. They've been taking different forms. Of course, in each lifetime, we're a different person, and so we have different objects of attachment. But the basic uh, inclination to hold on to things other than ourselves, that has been coming from time immemorial. So to wean ourselves off that takes time. It takes practice, patient, persistent practice of just trying to turn our attention back towards ourselves and hold on to that self-attentiveness.
Thank you.
There's no shortcut. We just have to be patient and persistent. And if we're patient and persistent, success is assured.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's just wonderful. Thank you very much.
Right.
Christine, I want to ask you a quick question. I had the
Yeah.
opportunity to read your question 2 or 3 times, and I took from it a note of desperation in there. And I think Michael gave you a great answer, but did he give you a broad enough answer to cover your other questions implied within your letter to him?
Well, yes, it's everything that he says over and over and over again. It's the first time I've articulated it, because you're such a wonderful host and welcoming. I've never written down a question. And it's the same answer that I keep hearing for everybody else. It's just very difficult in the moment because everything's ego, even the desperation's ego, even, you know, me getting on my knees is ego because everything is love. But in the moment, it's just very difficult to see light when you realize everything's ego.
And Michael, she mentions the desperation of the moment. I'm guessing that most of us relate to that.
We're all in the same boat. We're all essentially undergoing the same struggle.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
the important thing that the the solution to all these problems lies within us. It is ourself. So if we hold on to ourself, all these things will gradually drop off. That is our attachment to all these things, our concern about all these things, our desperation to get out of all of this. Even that will drop off.
Yeah.
Encouraging all the way around. Christine, thank you
Yeah.
very much. I'm glad you got your question in.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
So
Right.
let's move
But
on to
it won't all drop off entirely until ego itself drops off. So we need to be patient and we need to be persistent in our practice.
Yeah. And love every little bit of it. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how long you've been, I don't know how long you've been with Ramana or with Michael on Zoom, but you just heard one of the words he repeats over and over again, and I'm grateful for it. Our persistence is so required to make all of this happen. Yeah. Thank you, Christine.
Well,
And
thank
Michael,
you.
ready to move on to the next question?
Yes.
From Suresh. Ramana has said that when final liberation happens, there is no body, there is no mind, there's no world whatsoever. In terms of the body mind of the sage, this is interesting. Regarding the sage, is this like the superimposition of the snake on the rope, where the snake is never again seen, or is it like a mirage that is seen but is known without any doubt to be unreal? Michael.
Right. To us, the sage, let's take Bhagavan as the sage in this case. Bhagavan seems to us to be a body and mind because he appears to us as, in this dream of ours, he has appeared as such. But his teaching is that he is not what he seems to be. Because we see him as a body and mind, it seems to us that he is, like every other person, he's seeing the world, he's aware of the body, he's aware of the questions people ask him, he answers them, he writes poetry, he cuts vegetables in the kitchen, he walks around naturally, he does all the normal things that a person does, but he is not the person that he seems to be. The reason he appeared in the form of this person is to teach us that the solution to all our problems is the term within. So we need to understand that though he has appeared in this form, this is not what he actually is. What he actually is the pure being awareness that is shining in each and every one of us as our own being. I am. That's his reality. So, yes, Bhagavan said that when liberation is attained, that is when ego is annihilated, there will be no body or mind or world at all. The reason for that is simple. The body, mind, and world all appear to exist only in the view of ourself as ego. It's only when we rise as ego that there seems to be a body, a mind, and a world. As we can see from our experience in waking and dream. But when we don't rise as ego, there is no body, no mind, or no world at all. In sleep, we don't experience any of these things. When we wake up from sleep, we assume all these things continued while we were asleep. But we didn't experience them while we were asleep, and actually we have no evidence that anything other than ourselves existed in sleep. So when everything ceases to exist in sleep, albeit temporarily, obviously it's all going to cease to exist permanently when ego is annihilated. That is as Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uludunapadu, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. There, everything means all this phenomena, this mind, body, and world. All these exist only in the view of ego. So only when we rise as ego do all these things seem to exist. When we don't rise as ego, nothing exists. The truth is they don't exist even when they seem to exist. So he says, then he goes on in the same verse, he says, ego itself is everything. That is, we as ego are seeing ourselves as all these phenomena, as this mind, body, and world. And he concludes the verse by saying, therefore, investigating what this is giving up everything. Investigating what this is means investigating what this ego is. So long as we attend to other things, we seem to be ego. But when we turn our attention back to ourselves to find out who am I, this ego, there's no such thing as ego to be found. What we will find is just pure being awareness, which is what we actually are. Just like the rope seems to be a snake when we don't look at it carefully enough. If we look at it carefully enough, we'll see it was always just a rope. It was never a snake. So the question is this like the superimposition of the snake on the rope where the snake is never seen again? Yes, that is the truth. Or is it like a mirage that is seen but known without any doubt to be unreal? This is an analogy that is often given in scriptures. But that is, in Vedanta, there are so many different levels of explanation are offered to suit people of different levels of maturity. So for many people, to accept that this body, mind, and world have no reality at all, even when they seem to exist, and to understand that they seem to exist only because we've risen as ego, for many people, this is too much, too radical a teaching to accept. This is the truth. This is the ultimate. This is the truth. But for most people, it's very difficult to accept it. And they say, but see, Bhagavan saw the world just like we did. He answered the questions. He did this, he did that. So how can you say he didn't see anything? Well, it's not me who's saying it. Bhagavan himself said it. So for people who are not ready to grasp that, this analogy is given that a mirage, it appears to be water. But even when you come to know that it's just a mirage, it's not water at all, you still see the mirage, you still see the appearance of water. This is an explanation that is given for those who are not able to grasp the deeper truth. The deeper truth is that none of this is real at all. Even now when it seems to exist, it is not real. So how can it continue to appear? That is, it all appears only in the view of ego. So in the absence of ego, how can it continue to appear? This is the truth that Bhagavan has made very, very clear. So it's up to us what type of explanation we want to accept. For some people, the deeper explanation that this is all unreal and it'll disappear just like when we see the rope is a rope, we no longer see it as a snake. For some people, this explanation alone will be satisfactory. For other people, only the mirage explanation will be satisfactory. Take your pick. But the snake rope explanation is the deeper explanation. The mirage explanation is a more superficial explanation, given to satisfy those who are not ready to accept the deeper explanation. I don't know if Suresh is here, but if you are here, Suresh.
We have a Suresh who's here. Yes, Suresh B, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael, for the explanation. Very, very clear. I resonate more with the super and snake rope
Yes.
model, but I have another nuance on the question, which is, so we said, Bhagavan would cut vegetables in the kitchen, take a walk around Arunachala, etc.,
The
etc.
person we mistake Bhagavan to be does all those
Right.
things. But
But
Bhagavan is
here's
not
my,
that. But
in terms of the sage,
yes.
is it that there's no more sense of doership and enjoyership, and therefore it's as if the world is unseen? Because even in ignorance, the self has never seen the world, right?
Exactly.
If it's beyond time and space,
Yes.
whether in ignorance or in liberation, the self never sees the world. So when you say in liberation, there's no body-mind world, are you saying because the identity shifts to the self, it's as if there's no body-mind world, but phenomenality is still perceived by the body-mind known as Ramana? So I'd like to now, my personal preference is the snake and rope, but
right.
just
Okay. Right.
clear.
The body-mind exists only in our view, not in Bhagavan's view. That is, the body and mind of Bhagavan are unreal. What is real is the light that is shining through that body and mind. That light is the light of infinite clarity and infinite love. That we saw shining through the name and form of Bhagavan. But he is that light. He is not the name and form. That is, as he said, this body and mind, the body and mind of the jnani exists only in the view of the ajnani. In the view of the jnani, there is no body and mind, because the jnani is, but one thing Bhagavan often used to say, jnana me jnani. That means jnana alone is the jnani. Jnana in this context means that infinite pure awareness. So in the view of that infinite pure awareness, there are no finite things at all. In verse 4 of Uludunapdu, Bhagavan says, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms and how? So all these forms seem to exist only because they seem to us, it seems in our view, they seem to exist because we have identified ourselves as a form. Because we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, this person. I am Suresh, I am Michael, I am whoever. So long as we identify ourselves with the name and form of a person, all these other names and forms seem to exist. Does anything other than yourself seem to exist in sleep? Nothing. No. But all that shines in sleep is our own being, that pure awareness I am. Because that alone is real. So in the absence of ego, ego is the root and source of all that is unreal. But though ego is as such is unreal, it has an element of reality in it. Just like the snake is unreal as a snake, but it's real as a rope. Likewise, ego is unreal as ego, but it is real as Satchit, as pure being awareness. So that pure being awareness alone is what is real. That is why, because everything exists only in the view of ego, and because ego seems to exist only when we're looking at other things, when we turn back to look at ourselves, there's no such thing as ego to be found. That's why Bhagavan says in verse 17 of Upadesha, there he's referring to ego as mind. That's a knowing element of the mind. He says, if when one investigates the form of the mind without forgetting, there's no such thing as mind at all. This is the direct path for all. So what we refer to as manonasha, the destruction or annihilation of the mind, the eradication of ego, is not a real eradication, because there has to be something in order to eradicate it, or in order to annihilate it. It is seeing that it never existed. Just like when you look carefully at the snake and see it's a rope, metaphorically speaking, you can say you've killed the snake. But there never was actually a snake there in the first place. So ego doesn't exist even now. It seems to exist so long as we mistake ourselves to be this person or any other person. So the ultimate truth is, since ego will cease to exist when we investigate it, that is, since ego will be found to be ever non-existent when we investigate it, everything else is also non-existent. That's why the ultimate truth is ajata. Nothing has ever arisen, nothing has ever come into being. Because nothing has ever come into being, nothing has ever been destroyed. There's a famous verse, but it occurs in a couple of Upanishads. It occurs in Gaudapada's Mandukya Karika. It occurs in Vivekachudamani, and Bhagavan has also translated it as a verse in Tamil, and also in Tamil prose, Bhagavan has translated it. That verse in Sanskrit begins, Na nirodho, there's no destruction. Why is there no destruction? Na cha upati, because there's also no arising. There has to be something has to come into being in order to be destroyed. But the ultimate truth is, but nothing has ever come into being. And that verse ends, that this alone is paramarthikam. This alone is the ultimate truth. Is that clear?
Yes, wonderful explanation. May I just ask one more?
Yes.
So yes, in deep sleep, there's no body-mind world, but on waking, the body-mind world gets projected.
Yes.
Now, on liberation, then we based on our discussion, again, there's no body-mind world.
Yes.
So, what is the experiential difference that makes the deep sleep experience permanent on liberation? What is the knot of the heart that gets burnt up? Is there any way to describe that?
The difference
between deep sleep,
yeah, that is what
liberation.
you're asking in effect is the difference between manolaya and manonasa. Sleep is a state of manolaya, like swoon or coma or general anesthesia or nirvikalpa samadhi. These are all states of manolaya. Manolaya means they're temporary dissolution of mind, whereas liberation is manonasa, the annihilation of mind. It all depends on how but these are all states of dissolution of mind. Laya is a temporary dissolution, nasa is a permanent dissolution. So where lies the why are other states, why are states of laya temporary? The reason is because we go into laya by the laya is brought about by some cause other than knowing ourselves as we actually are. Only when we as ego know ourselves as we actually are, is ego thereby destroyed. That is, what we actually are is pure awareness. When we fall asleep, for example, the cause for falling asleep is because we're too tired to continue projecting all this, so we subside in sleep. After we have subsided, what remains is pure awareness. But by the time that pure awareness alone shines, ego has already gone, it's already subsided. So ego cannot be destroyed in its absence. Supposing there's a court of law, and some person is tried in absentia when they're absent. Supposing some criminal is on the run, but anyway, they conduct the court case, and finally it's decided this criminal, the death sentence is passed. But the death sentence cannot be carried out in the absence of the criminal. They have to catch him first before they can. So subsiding in layer, though what remains after we subside is pure awareness, that pure awareness doesn't destroy ego because ego is absent. So it's in the waking and dream state, when ego is present, we as ego need to experience ourselves as pure awareness. As soon as we as ego experience ourselves as pure awareness, we cease to be ego and remain as pure awareness, which is what we always actually are. So in order to experience ourselves as pure awareness, we need to turn our entire attention back to ourselves. And turn our attention to ourselves so keenly that we thereby cease to be aware of all other things. Then we who have made that effort to attend to ourselves will experience ourselves as pure awareness, and thereby we will be dissolved forever. That is like seeing looking carefully at the rope and at the snake and seeing that it's just a rope. As soon as you've seen it's a rope, you can no longer see it as a snake. In all other cases, as I say, the ego subsides first by some other cause, and what remains then is pure awareness. But that pure awareness doesn't destroy ego because ego is absent. So it's as ego that we need to experience ourselves as pure awareness. But ego can never experience itself as pure awareness, because as soon as it experiences itself as pure awareness, it ceases to be ego and remains as pure awareness.
Beautiful explanation,
Mm.
Michael. Beautiful.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Right,
Thank
right.
you. Thank you.
Suresh, thank you very much. Appreciate your follow-up questions as well. Michael, your answers generated several follow-up questions from the chat. I want to just read one because of time. It's from Chandra, who says that for those who say the world goes on after liberation, that would be the worst state to be in, worse than suffering in ignorance. Any comment, or do you want to go to the next one?
Well, for whom would it be worse? I mean, the world appears only in the view of ego. So in the absence of ego, how can there be any world? What remains after the annihilation of ego is just pure awareness, pure being awareness, which is what we always actually are. And in the view of pure being awareness, there is never any body or world or mind or any such thing. It's described as pure awareness because it's devoid of all content, all limitations. All knowledge of anything other than ourself is a limitation. It's only when we limit ourselves as a form that we see all these other limited forms. But what we actually are, in that verse 4 of Ulladu that I referred to earlier, what Bhagavan says is, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms and how? Can what is seen be otherwise than the I? I means the EYE. He's using the word I there as a metaphor for awareness. So if the awareness sees itself as a form, it will see forms. If the awareness sees itself as it is, the infinite and formless whole, it won't see anything. And then he concludes that verse by saying, the I, EYE, is oneself. the infinite I. When he says it's infinite, that means it's formless, because all forms are limited, they're finite. That which is infinite cannot be a form.
Got it. Want to move on?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chandra
Right.
and Suresh, for this conversation. It's been wonderful. Jacques has a question. I want to read it to you briefly. He's here today. Why, if Bhagavan is the non-dual reality in and out of which nothing else exists, would we have the need to refer to an outward form such as Arunachala
Would he
as
have the need?
pardon me?
You said, why would we have the need? Why would he have the need?
Why would
Exactly.
would he have the need to refer to an outward form as Arunachala as his guru? I ask this in reference to your latest YouTube videos on Sri Arunachala, Padagam, and Astakam, where Bhagavan either prays to, excuse me, or has a spontaneous outpouring of devotion towards Arunachala. Is this only because he appeared to his followers in a human form and did this as some sort of example to give to them? But even then, I don't see why the one only without a second would have the need to either address some sort of outward form. If Bhagavan recognized his Atma-sarupa at the age of 16, wouldn't that be the end of the story? And his last comment, I find it confusing that the one and only reality was somehow attend to what seems like a division or a distinction, which seems like a duality as such in the form of a mountain. Michael.
Okay. Firstly, if Bhagavan recognizes Atma-sarupa at the age of 16, even to say his Atma-sarupa is not quite correct. That he saw himself as Atma-sarupa. So the Atma-sarupa is not something other than himself that he saw. He saw that is what he actually is. And indeed, for Bhagavan, that is the end of a story. But for us, it's not the end of a story because we haven't yet seen ourselves as Atma-sarupa. So we are still in ignorance. So in our ignorance, that is Atma-sarupa, which is the pure Sat-chit, the pure being awareness that we actually are, has appeared outwardly in the form of Bhagavan to give us teachings. He taught not only by words, but also by example. So he's showing us the way by his teaching, by his teachings, and also by his example. So in Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, he is teaching us the path of love, which is not a separate path than the path of jnana. The path of jnana is the culmination of the path of love. Bhagavan often said bhakti is the mother of jnana. So bhakti means the love to, ultimately it means the love to know and be what we actually are. Love for what is alone real, which is ourself as we actually are. But as he says in verse 4 of Uludunapadu, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. We cannot conceive of God as formless. We may have an idea, God is infinite, God is formless. But these are all just words, ideas. We cannot experience him as that infinite formless reality so long as we experience ourselves as a form. That's why that is the best answer to your question is given in many of the verses of Arunachala, Paticam, and Ashtakam, but the best answer to this particular question you asked is in verses 3 and 4. So if you read the detailed explanations I've written on these on each of these two verses,
I did.
yeah, did that help to clarify at all, or still not clarified?
Well, no, I understand that. That's why I inserted that in supposition in the question that he did it for our benefit because we see him as an embodied being and
From
whatnot.
our point of view, we can
From
say
our perspective, yes.
yeah. From
But
our
what I
perspective,
don't get, but what I don't get is, well, like what you quoted, just quoted the other part of it. If one is not a form, who can see their forms and how? Why would he? I mean, okay, let's say we need a guru. We find it in Bhagavan.
yeah.
But if he's one indivisible and limitless awareness, why? I don't know. Maybe it's because,
He is one infinite indivisible
yes,
awareness.
but why the need
do
for
you
another one?
do you see him as such? When
Well,
you say that he sang Arunacha Patikam and Arunacha Ashtakam,
mhm.
we say he did that because we see him as a person.
Yes, I see him as a person in terms of, yes, like I see you as a person and all the rest.
So long as we seem to be a person, God seems to be a form. So Bhagavan is showing us the practical way to know ourselves as we actually are. And a key part of that is I mean, love is absolutely essential key for that. So as I explained in those two articles, so long as we cannot meditate on God as formless. Bhagavan says trying to meditate on God as formless is like wandering over the world to see the sky. Where, however far we wander, we're never going to get any closer to the sky because the sky is space. It's ever present. We don't need to go anywhere. So trying to think of God as formless is futile. But in verse 3, then in the next line he says, but if one thinks of your form without thinking, form will dissolve like a salt doll in the ocean.
Yes.
Thinking of your form implies your swarupa, what you actually are. And thinking without thinking means, so long as we're thinking of anything other than ourselves, that is a mental activity. It's a vritti, a movement of our mind. When we attend to the swarupa of Arunachala, which is our own being, that is not a vritti, it's not a mental activity. Because to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we subside and all our mental activity subsides along with us. So thinking, that's why Bhagavan describes it as thinking without thinking. So it's only, we cannot think without thinking of external forms. It's only when we attend to ourselves that is thinking of without thinking. So, but then why should we worship an external form? In verse 4 he says, only to make yourself known, you appear as so many different forms in different
religions.
Religions, yeah. So he says there, the purpose of God appearing in so many different forms is to make himself known. And that doesn't mean to make himself, doesn't just mean to make himself known in name and form, because he says, you who exist and shine. When he says, in that verse, every line begins, Irundoli, exist and shine, that is referring to Satchit. So Arunachala is Satchit. That Satchit appears in so many different forms in order to make itself known. That implies in order to make itself known as Satchit. The reason for this is that knowing ourselves is extremely easy. What stands in the way of us knowing ourselves is our Vishaya Vasanas. Those Vishaya Vasanas are the impurities in the mind. And we cannot, when the impurities are very strong, we won't even feel any inclination to attend to ourselves. So we are told God exists externally in a form as Rama, as Krishna, as Shiva, as Narayana, as Jesus, as Arunachala, as Ramana, whatever, all these different names and forms. that becomes a focus for our attention. And by focusing our attention on that name and form of God, we are thereby withdrawing it from all the other things. So as our love for a name and form of God increases, the concern about other things drops off. And we become more and more like a child, depending on God for everything. And trusting God to take care of everything. So we no longer worry about how we're going to pay our rent, how we're going to pay the bills, how we're going to do this, how we're going to do that. He will take care of everything. So more and more we give the entire burden to him. So we are withdrawing our attention from other things and focusing it on that one thing. We still take God to be something external, but the mind is purified by that worship of external name and form. As the mind is purified, it is clarified. As it is clarified, we come to understand, though God appears externally in form, he cannot be limited to that form. God is the one infinite whole, other than which there is nothing. So God is my own reality. In one of the verses of verse 7 of Arunachal Bhagavan says, if all the 5 elements and everything that is made of those 5 elements, all the living beings that are composed of these 5 elements, if all are nothing other than you, then who am I who rise as if another? So this is all intimately connected with this path of self-investigation. So long as we take ourselves to be a form, it is appropriate to be devoted to an external form of God. Even when we understand that the reality of God is our own reality, if we don't have sufficient love to be holding on to self-attentiveness all the time, whenever we're not holding on to self-attentiveness, we should hold on to the external form of God. That's all part of the process. And it's not just Patikam and Ashtakam. Bhagavan has written 5 hymns in all. Aksharamlai is full of this. But you can see throughout all of these, Bhagavan is constantly referring to Arunachala as shining in the heart. So he is simultaneously worshipping the external form and worshipping recognizing the external form is the external form of what is ever shining in the heart as I. So it's a beautiful blend of bhakti and jnana throughout Arunachal Stuti Panchakam.
Can I, considering your answer, can I put it maybe, I don't want to go into a personal rant on my past traditions, but I went through about 10 different traditions and went through devotion to a guru. It was very emotional, and I don't know, I just came to see the falseness of a lot. I find many forms of spirituality are they're pseudo gurus and pseudo.
Let's not say false. Many of them are superficial.
Okay.
They serve a purpose at a certain time in our spiritual development.
Yeah.
But
okay.
we have to grow beyond that.
So what I'm getting at is the only real thing that I can see in this path that attracts me is Ananya Bhava. It is meditation, self-attentiveness.
Yes.
And the rest are sort of like floritudes. Is that that's coming from the French? Ornaments in a sense. And so maybe I'm the only one. Yeah. Maybe it's my mistake, but I'm not attracted to these outward forms, other than maybe Bhagavan, who I can relate to in a sense. Yes. Because he has this history, and it appears that way to us, of course, as we are forms. I understand that. But I'm not attracted, and I don't have this sort of devotion. I'll be candid about it. I just don't have it anymore. I used to have it, now I don't have it. So that's maybe part of the motivation why I'm asking this question. Yes. And so am I that astray, and would I have to do something to rectify that, or can I just do the self-attentiveness to my... to the best of my ability.
We are all going through a process. So things that appear necessary at one stage appear unnecessary at a later stage. But everything where we stand now is based on everything we've been through in the past. When we go to primary school, we learn A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We learn the alphabet. We learn 1 times 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, and so on. We learn the times table, all these things. We don't continue reciting these things when we come to study PhD. But if we hadn't learned all those things in primary school, we wouldn't be in university studying for a PhD, doing PhD research. So it's all built on that. So the whole of the bhakti path is built on that is the foundation of the bhakti path. The starting point is this nama rupa upasana, devotion to a name and form. So now it may seem to you to be unnecessary, but actually you may later find, as you go deeper in this path, you may, in due course, it may become clearer to you why Bhagavan sang all these things. If we really want to understand Bhagavan, merely studying Nana, Uludunapadu, Upadeshundiya, Amma-vichara, all these things, these are all very important. But it's not complete without Arunachal-stuti Panchakam. Bhagavan's teachings are one package. So it's another dimension of Bhagavan's teaching. To you at present, it may not seem so important. There may come a time later where you begin to see the importance of it, or maybe not. Maybe it's in the past. Maybe you no longer need that. But we shouldn't. There's a huge amount of Bhagavan teaches some very, very subtle truths through Arunachal-stuti Panchakam. Remember, this is this path Bhagavan has shown us. It's a very simple path, but it's also a very deep and subtle path. So many subtle truths are revealed by Bhagavan through the verses of Arunachal-stuti Panchakam. And they're not at all not in any way in conflict with all this is support for the effort we make in holding on to self-attentiveness.
Okay, Michael, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jacques.
Thank you.
Good answers all the way around.
And can I just add, for anyone else who has this sort of doubt, I suggest you read the explanations I've been writing recently for the verses of Arunachal-ashtakam, because Bhagavan clarifies many important, subtle, deep truths there.
On Michael's blog.
Yes.
Michael, one thing came up that actually many things came up, and I'm sure a lot of people have different views on them. One thing came up that struck me that you said here not so long ago this morning, that you've said many, many times in the past is, and I don't have it down verbatim, but best I can remember is, as we continue to focus on the name and form of God, which I take as self, our attention on other things continues to fade away or diminish,
Yes.
or whichever word you used. A question I have, I'm thinking of some people I know who focus on name and form pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
The question is, shy of recognizing our own full self-realization, will these other things we see ever fade away completely, shy of self-realization?
Well, no, I mean, so long as we take ourselves to be a form, whatever idea we have about God is a mental conception, and mental conceptions are all limitations.
Right.
God is infinite. God is infinite being. But when we when we don't know ourselves as that infinite being, we cannot know God as that infinite being. So only by knowing ourselves as that can we know God as that. Until then, as Bhagavan said, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. Even if we say, I don't worship any forms of God, I believe God is formless, infinite, everything, that's just an idea. That's just a mental conception. And every mental conception is a form. So we can't go beyond name and form so long as we identify ourselves with a name and form. Regarding people who are satisfied just with worshipping God in name and form, that's the majority of people on the Bhakti Marga are more attracted to worshipping God in name and form than they are to the formless worship. I mean, turning our attention back within to know our own form. That is fine. We shouldn't disturb those who are much attached to that. Krishna himself says in Gita, those who are attached to karmas, we shouldn't disturb them. We shouldn't nabuddhi bedam, I think he says, something like that. We shouldn't disturb them in their faith. So if they believe Krishna is a form and they will worship only Krishna, that's fine. But the same Krishna who they say is a form, the same Krishna in so many verses in Gita, he says, fix the mind on self alone. Particularly in chapter 6, he says that. And he himself says, Aham Atma Gudakesha, I am the self in each and every living being. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of everything. So there's so much Advaitic teaching given by Krishna in the Gita, but that's not seen by everyone because they see it through their own, as Bhagavan said, according to the purity of the Antakarana, the same teaching reflects in different ways. So we see one meaning in the Gita, they see some other meaning. That is fine. At their level, what they are seeing is appropriate for them. They will make progress with their beliefs, but sooner, as they go through this process, the mind will be gradually purified. And finally, by the process of purification, it will gain the clarity to recognize that since God is infinite, nothing can be other than him. If there's anything other than God, then God is thereby limited. If I am other than God, then there's God and not God. God becomes limited. So if God is truly infinite, which they will all say God is infinite, but they don't take that through to its logical conclusion. So if God is infinite, who else am I but God? So where to find God? Only we find it in ourselves. That's why after describing the different practices of the path of bhakti, Bhagavan in verse 8 of Upadesha Undya, he says, rather than Anya Bhava, Ananya Bhava, in which he is I, is best among all. Anya Bhava means, Anya means what is other. So in that context, Anya Bhava means meditating upon or worshipping God as something other than ourselves. In other words, worshipping God as a name or form. Rather than that, Ananya Bhava, that is recognizing that God is nothing other than ourselves, that he is I, and meditating on him accordingly. In other words, meditating on nothing other than I, that is anatanam uttamam, that is best among all. And then in the next verse, verse 9, he says, by the strength of that, well, he said by the strength, bhava balatinal, that means by the strength of meditation, but it implies by the strength of that ananya bhava, that otherless meditation, in other words, self-attentiveness, being in sat bhava, the state of being, which transcends bhavana, transcends all mental activity, is what it implies, that is parabhakti tattva. That is the very nature of supreme devotion. So the path of bhakti goes through so many different stages. For most of the path of bhakti is focused on an external name and form of God. But all of that, the benefit of all of that is the purification of mind, which should give us the clarity to understand that God is nothing other than ourselves, or we are nothing other than God. And so the best way to meditate on God is to meditate on I alone, which is why Krishna in the Gita so many times says, fix your mind on self alone. He says I think in chapter 6, verse 19, he says, Atma-vichara. That means only in oneself. And in verse 25, which Bhagavan has translated into Tamil, he says, Atma-samstam manakritvana kinchitapi chintayet. Fix your mind on yourself. Do not think of anything else whatsoever. That is the path of self-investigation taught by Bhagavan. That is the ultimate path, practice in the path of bhakti. But not all people are ready for that.
Is it safe to say that's the
Michael,
entirety of self-realization? I mean, self-inquiry is only fixing yourself on self, focusing
The mind on
your
oneself,
attention on
yes.
self?
Bhagavan clearly defines it in the 16th paragraph of Nana. He says, Sadakalmum manate atma-vilve tirupatikutan atma-vichara mendrupaya. That means the name Atma-vichara is only for always keeping the mind on oneself. That's all there is to self-investigation, just attending to ourselves, fixing our mind on ourselves.
Michael, a good example is about Papaji, who goes to see Bhagavan. And he has the image of Krishna. And Bhagavan says, that too is from the mind.
Yes.
And Papaji leaves in a huff and a puff, saying, very angry with Bhagavan. And then he realizes what he said was absolutely true.
Yes, but Papaji is not a good example because he misrepresented Bhagavan's teachings in so many ways.
That's what I meant by pseudo gurus, Michael.
Yeah, the world is full of such people, would-be gurus. So what exactly happened and what exactly Bhagavan said to him, what he understood, God alone knows, but he certainly didn't understand Bhagavan correctly, or he wouldn't have been saying that nonsense that he was saying so often. Many of the things he said, he was plagiarized from Bhagavan, but he was twisting it in a way that misrepresented Bhagavan.
Okay, Michael, you ready to move on?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Next question is from Ruben. Ruben says, it was always hard for me to understand and practice self-inquiry. And I'm glad you just brought us up to speed with a bit more clarity on it there. And Ruben goes on to say, recently I read Sadhu Om's quote, for a young and earnest aspirant whose mind is still fresh and only a little manana, contemplation, reflection is needed. Whenever his mind strays outwards, he will reflect, all that is perceived through the five senses is known by me. So knowledge of anything only indicates that I am, and thus he will easily restore his self-attention. Michael, we are always automatically perceiving objects with our senses in the waking state. So when we are using our senses, but at the same time, we are also aware of the present moment without the thinking process and have this very subtle feeling, I am, is it the same thing as self-inquiry, or at least legitimate practice?
Firstly, we can't use our senses without the thinking process, because the senses and the objects of the senses are all mental creation. So it's all a product of the thinking process. So that we need to understand very clearly. Our aim in self-investigation is to fix our mind only on ourselves. But we haven't yet reached that point where we can keep our mind fixed firmly on ourselves. If we can keep our mind fixed firmly on ourselves, nothing else matters. But our attention keeps on coming outwards. So even in the midst of other activities, we should be trying to hold on to self-attentiveness as much as possible. So even when we're engaged in other activities, that is whatever, as Sadhu Om says in this quote, whatever we are aware of, whatever sense objects appear, whatever thoughts appear, whatever phenomena appear, they appear to whom? To me. So none of these things could appear but for my presence. So we need to hold on to our presence, our being, and more and more, if we focus our attention on ourselves, the more it will be withdrawn from other things. But until we are able to fix our attention on ourselves so firmly that we cease to be aware of anything else, even in the midst of other activities, even in the midst of seeing and tasting and hearing and everything, we should be trying as much as possible to hold on to this awareness I am, the awareness of our own being. That is self-investigation. That is, as Bhagavan says in the sentence in the 16th paragraph of Nana that I just referred to, he clearly defines Atma-vichara, self-investigation, as always keeping the mind on oneself. So we need to try as much as possible to keep our mind on ourselves. Keeping our mind on ourselves means keeping our attention on ourselves. The more we attend to ourselves, the less we will attend to other things. So we are trying to wean our mind off its interest in other things and cultivate interest only in knowing who am I. And in order to know who am I, obviously we have to attend to we have to attend to ourselves.
I'm looking.
When you say describe, Ruben, when you describe I am as a very subtle feeling, it is very subtle in the sense that it's not an object, it's not some gross form or something. But though it's very subtle, it's also what we know more clearly than any other thing. We tend to overlook it because we're so interested in knowing other things. But the one thing that is always clear to us, the one thing we always clearly know, is our own being, I am. So, and the more we attend to it, the more it will take over our interest in all, or our interest in all other things will wane, and our interest in holding on to this fundamental awareness of our own being, I am, that our interest in that, our love for that will increase. So, but it requires patient and persistent practice. That's the only way to wean our mind off its interest in all other things.
One question here in chat that I'd like to read to you. I haven't pre-read it. I'll do my best, okay? Before we go on, because it may be connected to what you were just talking about. And if it doesn't, I apologize. Michael, this is from Bharath. Michael, how do we interpret the Gita's teaching, do your duty without expecting the fruits of the action from Advaita's point of view? Does it tie to what Bhagavan said in his note to us, to his mother? According to one's prarabdha, he who is for that being there with each one, makes one to dance. Meaning, if you are the self, there is no doer, and therefore there is no doership. The fruits of action, therefore, does not arise. Is this the right way to interpret this? In other words, fruits of action applies only if we take ourselves as the ego?
That is, we don't take ourselves as ego. As ego, we take ourselves as a person. People often talk about identifying with ego. Ego is not something we identify with. Ego is that which identifies with other things. So the I that identifies itself as I am this person, that is ego. So long as we rise as ego, we experience ourselves as a person. That is a bundle of 5 sheaths. This physical body, the life that animates it, the prana, the mind, the intellect, and the will. All these 5, this bundle of 5 things is what we experience as ourselves. This is what makes up the person that we seem to be. So long as we seem to be a person, we inevitably have a sense of doership and a sense of experiencership. Because if this body is I, whatever this body does, I am doing. If this mind is I, whatever this mind is thinking, I am thinking. Whatever this mind is remembering, I am remembering. Whatever this will is wanting, I am wanting. So we're fully identified with this bundle of 5 sheaths, and so we have a sense of doership. And as a result, we also have a sense of experiencership. So long as we experience ourselves as a person, we experience ourselves as a person in a world. And as a person, we have a certain role to play. We start off life as a small child. So as a child, we're completely dependent on our parents to take care of us. And as we grow up, we begin to have responsibilities. Because we've got to grow up, we've got to learn about the world. So we have to go to school, we have to go through so many things. We have to, these are all things that we are part of the process of growing up. And once we grow up, we often end up with a job and with a marriage and with a mortgage and with all sorts of things. And so we have responsibility to, by that time our parents may be getting elderly, so we've got responsibility to our elderly parents, we've got responsibility to our husband or wife, we've got responsibility to our children, we've got responsibility to our employer. So many things we have to do. So karma is inevitable. Once we take this body, we cannot avoid doing. But the important thing is we should do all these with detachment. We shouldn't be, as Krishna says beautifully in Gita, you have the right to the action, not to the fruit thereof. So we shouldn't be always acting. Our action shouldn't always be motivated by desire for fruit. Bhagavan has made it very clear in Upadesha. He says in verse 3 of Upadesha, when he's talking about nishkarmiya karma, he says kartanukakam nishkarmiya karma. That is nishkarmiya karma. Nishkarmiya karma means action that is done without desire for the fruit, done for God. Kartanukakam means done for God. That implies done for the love of God. That is, every action has a motive. So if we're not motivated by desire for any result, what are we motivated by? We should be motivated by the love of God. That some people may say, no, I'm not motivated. I don't believe in God, but I'm motivated by living a righteous life. I'm motivated by doing a good thing, doing good things and everything. That all amounts to we are motivated by what is good. So there's some motivation. But why do we want to do good things? We're doing good things for our satisfaction. So again, there's a certain selfish element even in doing good actions. Whereas if our motive is only for the love of God, we are doing it for the love of God and not for anything, even for our own satisfaction, we're not doing it, just for the love of God. That is true nishkarmiya karma. So that is how we should live our life. So our life should be centered on God. So long, that is at the early stage, we talk about being centered on God. Later, when we come to understand God is not something other than ourselves, God is that which is shining in our heart as I, then that's a more mature type of thing. Then we are less concerned about the actions. We're more concerned about holding on to God in our heart. But it's all a part of the same process. So, but from the way Bhagavan has explained it in Upadesha, he makes it clear that nishkarmiya karma is the preliminary stages of the path of bhakti. That is, he after saying that nishkarmiya karma done for God will purify the mind and show the way to liberation. That means it's not the way to liberation, but he'll give the mind the clarity to see the to liberation. The word he uses in Tamil, Gativari Kambikam, we usually translate it as show the way to liberation, but the literal meaning is it will cause to see the way to liberation. It'll make us see what is the way to liberation. So that means implied the karma, the nishkarmiya karma itself is not the way to liberation, but it will purify the mind and give the mind to understand the clarity to understand the way to liberation. The way to liberation is not doing but being. But we haven't reached that stage yet. So he begins by starting off from the nishkarmiya karma, and he says, this is certain. Puja, japa, and dhyana are actions of mind, speech, and body. And in this order, they each is superior to the previous one. So that means when he says superior, in the context he implies it's more efficacious in purifying the mind. So better than puja, japa is more efficacious in purifying the mind. Better than japa, dhyana is more efficacious. Then he talks about each of these. He gives a very broad definition of puja, not just ritualistic puja, but considering everything to be a form of God. If you worship everything with the attitude that it's all a form of God, that is good worship of God. That's a very broad and all-inclusive definition of puja. It doesn't limit it just to a ritualistic worship. Then he talks about japa. Rather than singing hymns of praise, japa is better. Rather than japa in a loud voice, japa softly, pronounced softly within the mouth is better. Better than japa pronounced softly in the mouth, mental japa is better. A mental japa is a form of dhyana. And then he goes on in verse 7 to talk about dhyana. Rather than interrupted dhyana, uninterrupted dhyana, like the flow of a river or the pouring of ghee, that is best. When he's saying better, better, best, he's talking about the efficacy in purifying the mind. So up to that point, all this is nishkarmiya karma. Nishkarmiya puja, nishkarmiya japa, nishkarmiya dhyana. And it's important to remember, most people who do puja, most people who do japa, most people who do dhyana are not doing it nishkarmiya. They're doing it for the fulfillment of some desire. But here Bhagavan talking just about the nishkarmiya karma. So all this puja, japa, and dhyana, they're actions of body, speech, and mind. And these all will purify the mind. And as we progress, that is, the meditation is the most effective way to purify the mind. But up to there, but it's talking about meditating. It implies meditating on God as a name or form. In verse 8, as I was mentioning earlier, Bhagavan says, rather than Anya Bhava, Ananya Bhava, in which he is I, is best among all. Anya Bhava means taking God to be a name or form. Whereas Ananya Bhava means, Anya means what is other. So when you take God to be something other than yourself, you take him to be some name or form. Whatever your conception of God, even if you think he's nameless, formless, infinite, that's still a mental conception. So you're still taking him to be something other than yourself. When you understand that God is your own reality, and therefore meditating on nothing other than I, that is best among all. At that point, the karma drops off, and because attending to ourselves is not a doing, it's a state of being. Because the more we attend to ourselves, the more we as ego subside back into our being. So in the next verse, he says, by the strength of that self-attentiveness, he doesn't say self-attentiveness, but that's what's implied. By the strength of that self-attentiveness, being in Satbhava, which transcends all mental activity, that is the supreme devotion. So this nishkarmiya karma that is taught in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan is also teaching the same thing in Upadeshundya. But he's not saying that he's showing how this eventually has to lead to knowing, attending only to ourselves. So in the same in Gita, Krishna talks about nishkamya karma, but he also talks about fixing the mind only on oneself. So many different teachings are to be taught to people at different levels of spiritual development. So when we read if we are on the path of Bhagavan path of Atma-vichara, how does this apply to us? Well, though we're still on the path, though we're aspiring to follow this path of Atma-vichara, our attention isn't always on ourselves. We feel ourselves to have responsibilities, to have family, friends, employer, all these things. We've got so many responsibilities. We have to play our role. But Bhagavan has made it clear, because you referred to what Bhagavan wrote in a note to his mother. What Bhagavan makes clear there is we don't actually have to worry about what we need to do, because whatever we need to do, we'll be made to do. So in accordance with the prarabdha of each one, he who is for that, which means God or Guru, being there implies being in each place, being in the heart of each one of us, will cause the dance. They will make us act. So if we have responsibilities to our elderly parents, our husband, our wife, our children, our employer, all these things, we need not worry about that. God will make us discharge whatever we need to do in accordance with prarabdha, we will be made to do. So and if we try to do anything that is not in accordance with our prarabdha, it's not going to fructify. That's why he says in the next sentence, that which is never to happen will not happen in spite of any amount of effort. So, and then he says, that which is to happen will not stop in spite of any amount of obstacle. In other words, what is destined to happen is going to happen. What is not destined to happen is not going to happen. Iduveitinam, this is certain. Ahalin monamayerke nandru. Therefore, being silent is good. When he said being silent is good, what does he mean by being silent? He doesn't mean giving up all action. We can be silent only by giving up the doership, because whatever actions this body, speech, and mind need to do in order for the prarabdha to unfold, they will be made to do by God. So being silent means not rising as ego and identifying this body as I. So all these teachings that Krishna gives in the Gita, they're all necessary teachings. Some of them are more applicable at the earlier stages of spiritual progress. Some are more applicable at the later stages. But even the earlier teachings, like nishkarmiya karma, that will go on. But if we are truly following the path of Atma-vichara, the nishkarmiya karma will go on without our even thinking about it. Because we won't be concerned about the actions. We'll be concerned about more and more just holding on to Bhagavan in our heart, where he's ever shining as our own being.
Yeah, thank you for that, Michael. You got a real quick question that came in based on what you said earlier about doing well for others. It's really, it can be a selfish act. You say we should do all of our good deeds. That wasn't your word, for the love of God. And the question that came in is, some would say, isn't this dualistic? You answered it partially.
Well, if you take God to be something other than yourself, yes, it's dualistic. If you understand that God is your own reality, then it's
Right.
non-dualistic. It's all just a matter of understanding.
Yeah. The way
For
the
some
answer-
people, Bhagavan's Aranatya Stuti Panchakam seems to be very dualistic. But for people who understand, who see through the eyes of non-duality, it's full of expressions of non-duality is there.
Yeah, yeah. But the way the comment can be phrased suggests that it might be referring to doing something for the God outside of self, and that's
That
non-existent.
depends on how we all each have our own conception of God. So if you take God to be something outside yourself, yes, fine, you do it for that God. But as our understanding is clarified by the grace of God, we will come to understand God is not something other than ourself. God
Right.
is our own reality.
Which you say even more than the previous thing. Thank you.
Yes.
Sri Ram has a question. He's been
Yeah,
waiting.
but I think that was a question from Bharat, was it?
Okay.
Yes, Michael, thank you so much.
Was that a satisfactory answer?
It was. I just have a small clarification. So does it mean it is just fine to hold on to ourselves and follow the path of self-inquiry and not heed to the Bhagavad Gita or Nishkarmiya karma, and then things will
If
take
you're
it?
holding on to yourself, and Nishkarmiya karma will happen without your even thinking about
You
it,
needn't worry about looking
you
or
need not worry about anything.
Thank you.
Ultimately, that is the, if Bhagavan says in the 11th paragraph of Nana, Oruvan tan sarupam adeyam varayil, nirantara swarupa smaranaye kai patravanayin adu andre podam. Until one attains Swarupa, if one holds on to Nirantara Swarupa Smarana, that's uninterrupted self-remembrance, I mean self-attention, that alone is sufficient. So if we are holding on to self-attentiveness, that itself is, as he says in verse 10 of Upadeshundya, having subsided in the place from which one rose, that is karma and bhakti, that is yoga and jnana. So the more we hold on to self-attentiveness, the more we subside back into our being. And that is all these four paths.
Thank you, Michael. Very clear.
And he says, he implies the same, but in saying it in a different way in verse 14 of Upadesha of Uludunapduanabandam. The mere investigation to whom are all these karma, vibhakti, viyoga, ajnana, that itself is all these four paths, karma, bhakti, yoga, and jnana.
Thank you, Michael.
Sri Ram, your turn.
Michael, wonderful. Thank you very much. Quick two-part question. One is you just mentioned doership. That means giving a worship is equal to remaining still. But the body doesn't say I am a doer, and Brahman is. The doership is the. How do you do that? By self-inquiry, I assume, but by abolishing the ego. That's the only.
We cannot get rid of doership so long as we identify ourselves as this body.
Okay.
But
So it's a
doership
vicious circle.
Yeah, that is, doership is the very nature of ego, because ego identifies this bundle of 5 sheaves as I. So whatever is done by this bundle of 5 sheaves is experienced by it as I am doing it.
Yeah.
I am sitting, I am looking at this screen, I am thinking what to say next, I'm listening to your question, all these things. The doership is unavoidable so long as we rise as ego. If we want to get rid of doership, we have to get rid of ego. Bhagavan says that he implies it very clearly in verse 38 of Uludunapadu. Vinay mudal namayim, vile payan tupom. If we are a doer of action, we will have to experience the resulting fruit. But when one knows oneself by investigating who is the doer, doership will depart and all the 3 karmas will come to an end. So if their doership will not depart until ego departs.
Thanks, Michael. Michael, a question about this self-inquiry. Keeping the mind on the self. But keeping the mind on the self itself is a
Don't
subject.
keep your mind on the self. Keep your mind on yourself.
Right.
If you
Keep the
say
mind on
the
yourself.
self, what is that self? We reify it, we objectify it by saying the self. Atma means oneself, yourself, myself.
Right. But then that means the mind is an I, but the self itself, you cannot make the self an object or own self.
No.
The self is the one subject.
That is why it is self-attentiveness. We are attending to ourself. But mind and Atman are not two different things. Mind in this context means ego, which is the knowing element of the mind. Ego is Atman mixed and conflated with adjuncts. So it's turning our attention back on ourself. That's why I said, don't say the self, because then we make it sound like it's some sort of object. It's not
So
an
is that
object. You are to attend to
in,
yourself.
can you clarify that as knowingness, the knowingness I am without words? Somebody mentioned, I think Maharaj mentioned that. Same thing as self-attention. What it means is the knowingness. We know. Knowing this, I
Yeah,
am.
knowingness
Knowingness without
is
words.
another way of saying awareness or consciousness. So it's awareness being aware of awareness. But simple way of saying it is being self-aware, being attentively self-aware. We're always self-aware. We're always aware I am, but we generally overlook it because we're more interested in other things. We need to shift all the interest we take in other things, we need to shift our interest back to ourselves, to knowing who am I.
Is there a maintenance of duality in the beginning that somebody is observing, I
No.
am observing?
If there's a duality, it's not self-attentiveness. That's why we cannot practice Bhagavan's path without clearly understanding what the path is. That in self-attentiveness, there can be no duality, because the one who is attending and the one who is attended to are the same one. So where is the room for any? That is in dualistic knowing. There's a knower, an object known, and a means of knowing it. They're three separate things. I am knowing you because I'm hearing you. I'm seeing you. So the hearing and the seeing are the means by which I know you. But when it's a matter of attending to ourselves, the one who is knowing, the one who is known, and the means of knowing are all the same one awareness. So there's not in self-attentiveness, there's not the slightest duality. Therefore, being self-attentive is the correct Advaita Abhyasa. It's the only true Advaita Abhyasa.
Okay.
Thanks, Sri Rama.
Thank
We
you,
have
Michael. Thank you.
maybe one
Advaita
more
Abhyasa
question.
means, for those who don't understand, non-dualistic practice, because there are no two in self-attentiveness. There's only one.
Very good. Want to move on,
Sure.
Michael? Joe Michael is right beside you on my screen, maybe he is on others too. And he has one question. And Tina, we'll get to you after this, okay? Joe Michael sent a question which I find very intriguing, and I'll read it to you real quickly. It's one you've already seen. How would I, he writes, how would I, Michael, whose ego-ridden mind keeps getting distracted with non-self objects, grow and develop an overwhelming love and a penetrating intellect, which to my limited understanding seems to be a requirement for spiritual progress as related in happiness and the art of being. And if it's applicable, would you also, would that love and intellect be transitive, intransitive, or both?
Okay. The way to grow and develop that love and that very keen, sharp, penetrating intellect, what Bhagavan refers to as Kunda Matiyal in verse 28 of Uludunapadu, and as Nun Matiyal, very subtle. Intellect here means that power of discernment, that power of distinguishing ourself from all other things. That love and that power of distinguishing can be cultivated only by means of patient and persistent practice. So the more we try to attend to ourselves, the more our love for self-attentiveness will increase, and the sharper our power of discernment will become. So it's only by means of self-attentiveness. And since it is love for ourselves, and we're discerning or distinguishing ourselves from all other things, it is obviously intransitive. transitive awareness is knowing anything other than ourself. Knowing ourself is intransitive. There's no object of that is transitive means towards objects. In grammar, we talk of verbs that are transitive. They're verbs that take an object. Intransitive verbs are verbs that don't take an object. Some verbs are both, but there's a simple way of distinguishing verbs. So, for example, I stand. There's no object for standing, so that's an intransitive verb. But I push. That is a transitive, because what do you push? There has to be something that you push. So that is a transitive verb. In the case of Bhagavan talks about sutarivu and sutatrarivu, which are best translated into English as transitive and intransitive awareness. Transitive awareness is ego, the awareness that knows other things, whereas intransitive awareness is pure awareness, the awareness that knows nothing other than itself. So self-attentiveness is an intransitive knowing. And it's also the love that motivates it is an intransitive love. We're not having love for some object, we're having love for our own being. Love for ourselves. Is that a clear answer, Joe Michael?
Yes, thank you very much.
Right.
Okay, so we got Tina. Thank you, Joe Michael. And Tina's here with a question. Go ahead, Tina.
Hey, Michael. The in the yogic philosophy, the bliss body and then Satchitananda, and I'm going to just mention a few words, Ian, and if you could piece them together for me, and then Manolaya. So, from my own experiences, when I've thought that I was like in this blissful state, would that be Manolaya? And if you can actually define that blissful state from an experiential state, from a realistic state of what we need to look for.
Okay, Manolaya means temporary dissolution of mind. So a state like sleep or coma or general anesthesia, a state where the mind is completely dissolved, but only temporarily. That's what's meant by Manolaya. That is not our aim. Our aim is to bring about the permanent dissolution of mind. That is what is called manonasa, the destruction or annihilation of mind. That is brought about only by knowing ourselves as we actually are. As far as bliss is concerned, bliss is our real nature. That is what we actually are. But so long as we experience a bliss that comes and goes, since it comes and goes, it's something other than ourselves. So it's not the original happiness. I mean, that happiness, any happiness we experience ultimately comes from ourselves, because we alone are happiness. But so long as we experience it as something that comes and goes, we are not experiencing it as our real nature. So certain practices can lead to very blissful states. But in some of his songs, Adi Shankara has warned against getting caught up in such blissful states. Because if they're temporary blissful states, they'll come and they'll go, and we'll always be hankering for them, as if there's something other than ourselves. We need to understand that happiness is our real nature. So we can experience that happiness eternally only by knowing ourselves as we actually are. So we're not seeking some transitory feeling of bliss or something. We are seeking the real happiness that is our own nature, the infinite happiness that is our own nature.
Okay, and my next question would be then, so that comes more when our vasanas slow down and the mind just starts to settle a lot more. That's when we just start becoming more present in that state, in our natural state.
Yes, that is, we shouldn't take achieving Manolaya as an aim. There are certain yoga practices by which we can bring about a state of Manolaya. They can even last for a very prolonged time. That type of Manolaya is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, but that is of no benefit on the spiritual path, because in Manolaya, the vasanas are not eradicated. To illustrate this, Bhagavan used to tell the story. There was a yogi who lived on the banks of a Ganga, and he was very adept in going into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So he would sometimes spend days on end absorbed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So because he was people from the nearby village, they considered him to be a great Mahatma, and they were giving him food and everything. And one person came and wanted to be his disciple, so he was serving him as a disciple. And one day that yogi came out of Nirvikalpa Samadhi and he was feeling thirsty. So he asked his disciple to fetch water. But Ganga's flowing just nearby. So his disciple went with a cup to get some water. By the time he brought it back, the yogi had gone into Nirvikalpa Samadhi again. And he remained in Nirvikalpa Samadhi for 300 years. Because if the yogis who are very adept at that, they can go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, as a result of which all the physiological processes slow down. There may be just one breath, one heartbeat a minute or something. So they can remain in a state of almost suspended animation. So he was in this state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi for 300 years. When he woke up, the first thing he did was he angrily asked, "Where's my water?" But a jungle had grown up around him, because in those 300 years, the Ganga had changed course. The nearby village had moved to nearer where the river was. And of course, his disciple and the village, everyone had passed away long before, and he was just there in the jungle. Nobody knew about his presence. But he asked him, where's my water? What Bhagavan said about that, the last thought that was in his mind before he went into Nirvikalpa Samadhi was the first thought that arose when he woke up. That means when even the most superficial thought in the mind is not eradicated, what to say of all the vasanas? Vasanas are not destroyed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi or any state of Manolaya. They just go into abeyance. That is, when ego subsides, its vasanas subside along with it. When ego rises, the vasanas rise. That's why he says in the 8th paragraph of Nana, if the mind is made to subside by other means other than Atma-vichara, it will remain as if subsided, but it will rise again and wander under the sway of its vasanas. He's there indicating indirectly that the vasanas remain. So merely being in Nirvikalpa Samadhi or any state of Manolaya is not our aim. We can eradicate vasanas only in the waking and dream states, because vasanas that is, the vasanas we want to destroy are the Vishaya vasanas. That's the inclination to attend to anything other than ourselves. Vishaya means objects or phenomena. So we have strong inclinations to attend to other things. Vasanas gain their strength to the extent to which we allow ourselves to be swayed by them. So supposing, we can see this with people who have phobias or obsessions. They go on and on thinking about the thing they're afraid of or the thing they're obsessed about, and that becomes a bigger and bigger thing in their mind. So, that's just an extreme example, but we can see it. The more if for example, if someone is a smoker and they want to give up smoking, if they keep on yielding to the inclination to smoke, they'll never give up smoking. They have to resist that inclination. The more they resist the inclination, the weaker that inclination becomes. That is how people are able to give up habits like smoking. And sometimes if people have managed to give up that habit, they reach a point where they cannot imagine why they ever wanted to smoke in the first place. It seems something disgusting to them. But at one time, it was such a strong inclination they had to smoke. So this is how vasanas work. The more we allow ourselves to be swayed by any vasana, the stronger it becomes. The more we avoid being swayed by it, the weaker it becomes. So when we are practicing self-attentiveness, we are not allowing ourselves to be, so long as we're holding on to self-attentiveness, we're not allowing ourselves to be swayed by any Vishaya Vasana. So this is the most effective way of weakening the Vishaya Vasanas. Since the Vishaya Vasanas are the impurities in the mind, this is the most effective way to purify the mind. That's why Bhagavan says in verse 8 of Upadeshundya that I referred to earlier, rather than Anyabhava, meditating on God as something other than oneself, Ananyabhava, in which he is I, that is meditating on nothing other than I, with the understanding that God alone is shining in our heart as I, that is the best among all. When he says best among all in that context, it means it's the most effective means to purify the mind. So this is how vasanas are eradicated, by, in the waking and dream state, by choosing to hold on to self-attentiveness, we thereby weaken all the Vishaya Vasanas. This isn't the only way to weaken Vishaya Vasanas. On the path of bhakti, for example, by thinking more and more about God with love, we become less and less concerned about everything else, because God is going to take care of everything. So why should we think about paying the bills, paying the rent, all these other things that concern us? Why should we be concerned about health issues we may have, or anything, whatever it may be? Why should we be concerned if God will take care of it? So this is another way to reduce the strength of the Vishaya Vasanas. But this is less effective, because so long as we take God to be something other than ourselves, we're taking God to be a Vishaya, so our mind is still going outwards. So but of all the means to purify the mind, the most effective is self-attentiveness. But whether we're purifying mind by self-attentiveness or by devotion to an external form of God, all that can happen only in the waking and dream state. We cannot do it in sleep. We cannot do it in nirvikalpa samadhi. We cannot do it in coma state, because there's no ego there to make any effort, and the vasanas themselves are in abeyance.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Yes.
Thank you, Tina, and I'm glad you were patient there. Michael, we've got 3 minutes left.
Was my answer trying your patience?
Not for me. Your answer was amazing. I've had that answer for so long in my mind. So you really clarified it so much for me.
Okay, good.
So helpful, Michael.
Right.
Michael, we have 2 minutes left. I have a chat question that maybe you can answer in 2 minutes. I'll try it out on you, and if you can, I'll bring it back next time. It's from Ritwick, who is here, and he asked, how does Advaita Vedanta explain the heart? As I'm sure he's talking about the spiritual heart. As per my understanding, it is a part of the mind that has good thoughts like compassion, empathy, etc. Is that the right understanding? Question number one. And then how can the heart help in self-inquiry?
Heart, in its grossest, that is the grossest meaning of the heart is the blood propelling organ in the chest. That's the very grossest level. At a subtler level, the heart refers to the emotions, the kindness, or whatever. That's a deeper meaning. What all these things have in common is heart implies the center, what is most central. So in terms of a body, the pumping organism in the chest, that is what is most central. That's what keeps the whole organism ticking over. In terms of our mind, it's the emotions and everything seem to keep it ticking over. But deeper than the emotions is the will. So a deeper sense of the term heart is the will. We often refer to the when we say of someone, oh, they've got no heart at all, that means they've got no kindness. They don't have goodwill towards anyone. In a deeper sense, what is the center of the whole mind? It is ego, the knower of all. That is, mind consists of so many thoughts. Of all thoughts, the first thought, the centermost thought is the thought I, that is ego. Because it's only in the view of ego that all the other thoughts seem to exist. So the heart of the mind is ego. But what is the heart of ego? Ego is the adjunct conflated awareness. I am Ritwik, I am this person, I am Michael, I am whoever. The heart, the ultimate heart, the center of all centers is I am. That is the ultimate heart. How does that help? That is what we actually are. That is what we are seeking to know. So heart is ultimately, it's in its deepest sense, it's a synonym for what we actually are.
And can it help in self-inquiry?
Well, yes, that is what we're investigating. We're investigating our heart. Our heart in the sense of that fundamental awareness I am.
Ritwik,
Oh, thank you,
time
man.
for you, but we're out of time. And but I got your 2 questions in anyway, and Michael, you answered those in record time. I appreciate your effort to do that.
Unusual for
Thank you.
me.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much. So what I understood was heart is basically awareness that you want to
The
focus on.
ultimate heart. The ultimate
Yeah.
heart is the pure awareness.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you
Okay.
all.
That clarifies it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And Michael, thank you too.
Thank you, Michael.
You and
Awesome.
Overboard with some really good answers to a lot of questions. And I appreciate all the people who sent questions to the chat box. I think I got to 3 of them. There's many more there. It's a good sign because people still want to learn as much as they can from your experience and your
I'm
wisdom.
not trying their patience too much.
No, I don't think so. We had 49 people here today. That's a handful. And have a good month. We'll see you on the 7th of December as this year winds down. And I appreciate, again, as always, that you make time for us on the first Sunday of every month. So we've got many
The
more.
stress has to be on the month, not the Sunday.
Pardon me?
The stress is not the first Sunday, it's the first Sunday of the month.
The first Sunday of the month, isn't that what I said?
Yes, but you put the stress on Sunday, whereas previously you had said the first Sunday of the year.
Right. We got that corrected. Thanks again, and everybody, a
Thank you.
visual or audio thank you to Michael